Okay, we've got some data in a table. We've got some things called differences and frequencies. Okay, so this is definitely frequency data. Okay, we've got to read these words. 1 hour is subtracted from each of the actual times, and it's the differences that are summarized in the table. That's going to be important in due course. But to get started on this question, okay, we've just got to get the mean and the standard deviation of these differences. It says they're estimates, okay, but the differences are what are in the tables, and I've got their frequencies. So that means what I've got is one variable statistics. So on my calculator, okay, I need to choose my 1var mode, okay. So I need to press 1, and I've got a frequency table. You should by now all have your frequency column in. So I've got to type in some x values and the frequencies for those x values. Now what x value shall I choose for this first category? Well, it ranges from -6 to -4, so I need the middle of those. So I can do -6 plus -4 divided by 2, or I can just use my brain. It's obviously -5. So I'm going to put my first x value in as -5. There it is. It's put it in with the frequency of 1, so I'm going to need to change that to a 4, and I'm going to carry on till I've put all the data in. So where will that get me? Well, as soon as I've got my data plugged in, all I'm going to need to do, okay, is go option, and then obviously item 2. After you've pressed option, 1var calculations will tell you everything you need to know. In particular, it will have x bar, which is your mean, and sx, which is your standard deviation. So your calculator will get all 4 of these marks for you here if you do it sensibly. Now the next part is where we have to have done that reading, because we now need estimates in minutes of the mean and the standard deviation of the actual service times. Okay, so we could need to think about what's gone on here. He recorded his times. He's expected to do it in an hour. He took away an hour from the actual times to get these differences. So what that means, if he got a difference of say 4, that means it must have actually have taken him an hour and 4 minutes, because when he took away the hour, then he got an answer of 4. You've got to realize that's the relationship between his actual times, okay, and the times, the differences in the table. Okay, so we know the mean of the differences, but now it wants the mean of the original times, and it wants us to work in minutes. Okay, so you've got to pick up that there's a difference of an hour, but we need to express that in minutes. So therefore you need to think that a difference in the table of 4 would correspond to an actual time of how many minutes. And that then tells you what you need to do to all the differences to reconstruct the original time. And you also need to remember what happens when you change your data. If you've got x values and you change them into ax plus b, then your notes will tell you what the mean of ax plus b is in terms of the original mean x bar, and the standard deviation of ax plus b again will be related to the original sx. The idea being that multiplying your x values by something may affect the mean and the standard deviation. Okay, adding something may affect maybe the mean or the standard deviation, but maybe not both. So you've got to decide whether converting these marks back into the original time in minutes involves adding something or multiplying by something or a combination of the two. And then you need to remember this theory to think about, okay, if I'm doing that to all of the differences to get the original times, which is going to be affected, the mean or the standard deviation or both, and how is it going to be affected? So you're going to take the x bar and the sx that you got in part 1. You're going to think about how they will be affected by the conversion back to the original times, and you'll need to do the appropriate calculations to x bar and sx and give me 2 new answers, and that's how you get those 3 marks.